Chapter 9 of The Maltese Falcon by Dashiell Hammett. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 9 The Liar. Spade returned to the living room and sat on an end of the sofa, elbows on knees, cheeks in hands, looking at the floor and not at Bridget O'Shaughnessy, smiling weakly at him from the armchair. His eyes were sultry. The creases between brows above his nose were deep. His nostrils moved in and out with his breathing. Bridget O'Shaughnessy, when it became apparent that he was not going to look up at her, stopped smiling and regarded him with some uneasiness. Red rage came suddenly into his face, and he began to talk in a harsh, guttural voice. Holding his maddened face in his hands, glaring at the floor, he cursed Dundee for 5 minutes without break, cursed him obscenely, blasphemously, repetitiously, in a harsh, guttural voice. Then he took his face out of his hands, looked at the girl, grinned sheepishly, and said, "Childish, huh? I know, but by God, I do hate being hit without hitting back." He touched his chin with careful fingers. Not that it was so much of a sock at that. He laughed and lounged back on the sofa, crossing his legs. A cheap enough price to pay for winning. His brows drew together in a fleeting frown. Though I won't forget it. The girl, smiling again, left her chair and sat on the sofa beside him. "You're absolutely the wildest person I've ever known," she said. "Do you always carry on so high-handed?" "I let him hit me, didn't I?" "Oh, yes, but a police official." "It wasn't that," Spade explained. "It was that in losing his head and slugging me, he overplayed his hand. If I'd mixed it up with him, he couldn't have backed down. He'd have had to go through with it, and we'd have had to tell that goofy story at headquarters." He stared thoughtfully at the girl, and then asked, "What did you do to Cairo?" "Nothing." Her face flushed. "I tried to frighten him into keeping quiet until they had gone, and he either got too frightened or stubborn and yelled." "And then you beamed him with the gun?" "I had to. He attacked me." "You don't know what you're doing." Spade's smile did not quite succeed in concealing annoyance. "It's just what I told you. You're fumbling along by guess and by God." "I'm sorry," she said, face and voice soft with contrition. "Sam." "Sure you are," he said, no longer showing annoyance. He took tobacco and papers from his pocket and began to make a cigarette. "Now you've had your talk with Cairo. Now you can talk to me." She put a fingertip to her mouth, staring across the room at nothing with widened eyes, and then, with narrower eyes, glanced quickly at Spade. He was engrossed in the making of his cigarette. "Oh, yes," she began. "Of course." She took the finger away from her mouth and smoothed her blue dress over her knees. She frowned at her knees. Spade licked his cigarette, sealed it, and asked, "Well?" while he felt for his lighter. "But I didn't," she said, with short pauses between words as if she were selecting them with great care. "Have time to finish talking to him." She stopped frowning at her knees and looked at Spade with clear, candid eyes. "We were interrupted almost before we had begun." Spade lighted his cigarette and laughed, his mouth empty of smoke. "Want me to call him up and ask him to come back?" She shook her head without smiling. Her eyes moved back and forth between her lids as she shook her head, maintaining their focus on Spade's face. Her eyes were inquisitive. Spade put an arm across her back, cupping his hand over the smooth, bare white shoulder farthest from him. She leaned back a little into the bend of his arm. He said, "Well, I'm listening." She twisted her face around to smile up at him with friendly insolence, asking, "Do you need your arm there for that?" "No." He removed his hand from her shoulder, dropping it to the sofa behind her. "You're altogether unpredictable," she murmured. He nodded and said amiably, "I'm still listening." "Look at the time," she exclaimed, wriggling a finger at the alarm clock perched atop celebrated criminal cases of America, saying with its clumsily shaped hands, 2:50 a.m. "Uh-huh. It's been a busy evening." "I must go." She jumped up from the sofa. "This is terrible." Spade did not get up. He shook his head and said, "Not until you've told me about it." "But look at the time," she protested, "and it would take me hours to tell you." "It'll have to take them, then." "Am I a prisoner?" she asked gaily. "Besides, there's the kid outside. Maybe he hasn't gone home to sleep yet." Her gaiety vanished. "Do you think he's still there?" "It's likely." She shivered. "Could you find out?" "I could go down and see." "Oh, will you?" Spade studied her anxious face for a moment and then rose from the sofa, saying, "Sure." He got a hat and overcoat from the passageway closet. "I'll be gone about 10 minutes." "Do be careful," she begged as she followed him to the corridor door. He said, "I will," and went out. Post Street was empty when Spade issued into it. He walked east a block, across the street, walked west 2 blocks on the other side, recrossed it, and returned to his building without having seen anyone except 2 mechanics working on a car in a garage. When he opened his apartment door, Bridget O'Shaughnessy was standing at the bend in the passageway, holding Cairo's pistol straight down at her side. "He's still there," Spade replied to the question her face asked. She bit the inside of her lip slowly, going back into the living room. Spade followed her in, put his hat and overcoat on a chair, said, "So we'll have time to talk," and went into the kitchen. He had put the coffee pot on the stove when she came to the door, and was slicing a slender loaf of French bread. She stood in the doorway and watched him with preoccupied eyes. The fingers of her left hand idly caressed the body and barrel of the pistol her right hand still held. "The tablecloth's in there," he said, pointing the bread knife at a cupboard that was one breakfast nook partition. She set up the table, while he spread liverwurst on, or put cold corned beef between, the small ovals of bread he had sliced. Then he poured the coffee, added it to Bacardi from a tall bottle, and they sat at the table. They sat side by side on one of the benches. She put the pistol on the end of the bench nearer her. "You can start now, between bites," he said. She made a face at him, complained, "You're the most insistent person," and bit on a sandwich. "Yes, and wild and unpredictable. What's this bird, this falcon that everybody's steamed up about?" She chewed the beef and bread in her mouth, swallowed it, looked attentively at the small crescent its removal had made in the sandwich's rim, and asked, "Suppose I would not tell you? Suppose I wouldn't tell you anything at all about it? What would you do?" "You mean about the bird?" "I mean about the whole thing." "I wouldn't be too surprised," he told her, grinning so that the edges of his jaw teeth were visible, "to know what to do next." "And what would that be?" She transferred her attention from the sandwich to his face. "That's what I wanted to know. What would you do next?" He shook his head. Mockery rippled in a smile on her face. "Something wild and unpredictable?" "Maybe. But I don't see what you've got to gain by covering up now. It's coming out bit by bit anyhow. There's a lot of it that I don't know, but there's some that I do, and some more that I can guess at, and give me another day like this, and I'll be knowing things about it that you don't know." "I suppose you do now," she said, looking at her sandwich again, her face serious. "But, oh, I'm so tired of it, and I do so hate having to talk about it. Wouldn't it be just as well to wait and let you learn about it as you say you will?" Spade laughed. "I don't know. You'll have to figure that out for yourself. My way of learning is to heave a wild and unpredictable monkey wrench into the machinery. It's all right with me, if you're sure none of the flying pieces will hurt you." She moved her bare shoulders uneasily, but said nothing. For several minutes they ate in silence, he phlegmatically, she thoughtfully. Then she said in a barely audible voice, "I'm afraid of you, and that's the truth." He said, "That's not the truth." "It is," she insisted in the same low voice. "I know two men I'm afraid of, and I've seen them both tonight." "I can understand your being afraid of Cairo," Spade said. "He's out of your reach." "And you aren't?" "Not that way," he said and grinned. She blushed. She picked up a slice of bread thickly encrusted with gray liverwurst. She put it down on her plate. She wrinkled her white forehead, and she said, "It's a black figure, as you know, smooth and shiny, of a bird, a hawk or falcon, about that high." She held her hands a foot apart. "What makes it important?" She sipped coffee and rum before she shook her head. "I don't know," she said. "They'd never tell me. They promised me £500 if I helped them get it. Then Floyd said afterward, after we'd left Joe, that he'd give me $750. "So it must be worth more than $7,500 anyway." "Oh, more than that," she said. "They didn't pretend that they were sharing it equally with me. They were simply hiring me to help them." "To help them how?" She lifted the cup to her lips again. Spade, not moving the domineering stare of his yellow-gray eyes from her face, began to make a cigarette. Behind them, the percolator bubbled on the stove. "To help them get it from the man who had it," she said slowly when she had lowered her cup. "A Russian named Kamidov." "How?" "Oh, but that's not important," she objected, "and wouldn't help you." She smiled impudently. "And is certainly none of your business." "This was in Constantinople?" She hesitated, nodded, and said, "Marmora." He waved his cigarette at her, saying, "Well, go ahead. What happened then?" "But that's all. I've told you. They promised me £500 to help them, and I did. And then we found that Joel Cairo meant to desert us, taking the Falcon with him and leaving us nothing. So we did exactly that to him first. But then I wasn't any better off than I had been before, because Floyd hadn't any intention at all to pay me the £750 he had promised me. I learned that as soon as we got here. He said we would go to New York, where we would sell it and give me my share, but I could see then that he wasn't telling the truth." Indignation had darkened her eyes to violet. "So that's why I came to you to get you to help me to learn where the Falcon was." "And suppose you'd got it. What then?" "Then I would have been in a position to talk terms with Mr. Floyd Thursby." Spade squinted at her and suggested, "But you wouldn't have known where to take it to get more money than he'd give you, the larger sum that you knew he expected to sell it for?" "I did not," she said. Spade scowled at the ashes he had dumped on his plate. "What makes it worth all that money?" he demanded. "You must have some idea, at least be able to make a guess." "I haven't the slightest idea." He directed his scowl at her. "What's it made of?" "Porcelain or black stone? I don't know. I've never touched it. I've only seen it once for a few minutes. Floyd showed it to me when we'd first got hold of it." Spade mashed the remains of his cigarette in his plate and made one draught of the coffee and rum in his cup. His scowl had gone away. He wiped his lips with his napkin, dropped it crumpled on the table, and spoke casually. "You are a liar." She got up and stood at the end of the table, looking down at him with dark, abashed eyes and a pinkening face. "I am a liar," she said. "I've always been a liar." "Don't brag about it. It's childish." His voice was good-humored. He came out from between table and bench. "Was there any truth at all in that yarn?" She hung her head. Dampness glistened on her dark lashes. "Some," she whispered. "How much?" Not very much." Spade put a hand under her chin and raised her head. He laughed into her wet eyes and said, "We've got all night before us. I'll put some more Bacardi into some more coffee, and we'll try again." Her eyelids drooped. "Oh, I'm so tired," she said tremulously. "So tired of it all, of myself, of lying, of thinking up lies, of not knowing what is a lie and what is the truth. I wish I—" She put her hands up to Spade's cheeks, put her open mouth hard against his mouth, her body flat against his body. Spade's arms went around her, holding her to him, muscles bulging his blue sleeves, a hand cradling her head, its fingers half lost among red hair, a hand moving groping fingers over her slim back. His eyes burned yellowly. End of chapter 9.